The old house on the hill was a living legend, a scar on the landscape of the city. Its broken windows looked like dead eyes, watching everyone who dared to pass nearby. They said the house was cursed, that something terrible had happened there many decades ago. Stories of brutal murders, an entire family disappearing in a single night, and a woman who never left the property, even after death, circulated among the locals. The sound of an old piano echoed through the walls on full moon nights, a sad and desolate melody that seemed to call out to those who listened. I, of course, didn't believe in ghosts until that night. It was a cold, damp evening, the kind of night that makes you huddle under the covers and thank your lucky stars for being indoors. The wind howled like a famished creature, scratching at the roof tiles and making the trees in the garden writhe like grotesque figures. I was alone, reading an old book about local urban legends, when I heard it. A faint sound, almost imperceptible, coming from the back of my garden. It was the sound of piano keys being pressed softly, a slow and mournful melody that seemed to come from far away, yet at the same time, from very close. I hesitated. The house on the hill was miles away, but the music felt like it was right there in my backyard, as if the very wind had brought it to me. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. The melody grew clearer, closer. It was a waltz, but not just any waltz. It was a piece that seemed to carry the weight of centuries of pain and despair. Each note felt like a nail being hammered into my soul, and I knew I couldn't ignore it. Curiosity overcame fear. I stepped outside, the book still in hand, and began walking toward the house on the hill. The night fog wrapped everything in a chilling veil, making the trees appear twisted and menacing. With each step, the music grew louder, as if the house was calling to me, drawing me into its shadowy embrace. I reached the rusty gates of the property. The music emanated from inside the house, now clear and penetrating. The gates creaked as they opened, as if protesting my intrusion. I entered, hesitating with every step. The garden was wild, the grass high and tangled, and the trees seemed to lean over me, as if trying to prevent my advance. The front door was ajar, creaking with each gust of wind. I hesitated. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The interior of the house was a labyrinth of shadows and dust. The air was cold and damp, heavy with the smell of mildew and something else, something sweet and nauseating at the same time, like decaying flesh. The sound of the piano was coming from a room at the end of the hallway, its chords more intense now, as if pulling me deeper inside. I walked down the corridor, the walls covered in cobwebs and faded portraits of people whose faces seemed distorted by time. In each room, the past seemed to manifest in fragments. Furniture draped in white sheets, mirrors reflecting only darkness, and a constant feeling that I was not alone. Finally, I arrived at the music room. The window was broken, the wind howling inside, and there it was, the old piano, its ivory keys yellowed by time, its legs carved with grotesque figures that seemed to writhe in the moonlight. Pale, bony hands emerged from the shadows, long, slender fingers gliding over the keys. She didn't see me, or perhaps she had seen me and simply didn't care. Her hands played the mournful melody, each note a sigh of pain, an ethereal lament. Her long, black hair cascaded over her shoulders, covering a white dress stained with something dark and indefinable. As I looked closer, I realized that the dark liquid staining her dress was blood. Her skin was translucent, as if life had long since abandoned her, leaving only an empty cocoon of pain and regret. The fixed gaze of her empty eyes paralyzed me. The music stopped. The pale hands disappeared beneath the veil of shadow. The silence of the house was more terrifying than the music. I was frozen, immobilized by the terror that had overwhelmed me. Then, she smiled, a horrific smile, bearing lips that revealed yellowed and decayed teeth. I spun on my heels and ran. I ran as fast as I could, without looking back. The house on the hill faded behind me, but the melody, the image of the woman, and that dreadful smile remained etched in my memory forever. I never slept in peace again. The music echoes in my mind to this day, a constant reminder of the night I visited the house on the hill, the night I almost lost my own soul. I woke up suddenly, drenched in cold sweat, my heart racing uncontrollably. I was in my bed, the covers tangled around me as if I had fought against something in my sleep. The soft light of day streamed through the window, bathing the room in a warm and comforting glow. I took a deep breath, trying to convince myself that it had all been just a nightmare. The house on the hill, the piano, the woman with black hair. Everything felt so real, but now, in the light of day, I managed to rationalize. It was just a dream, a creation of my tired mind after reading those urban legends. I got out of bed, still a bit shaky, and headed to the kitchen to make some coffee. The smell of the hot liquid calmed me, and I began to laugh at myself. How could I have been so frightened by a simple dream? I decided I needed to distract myself, maybe go for a walk or watch a movie. But as I turned to grab a mug, I heard something, a faint sound, almost imperceptible, coming from below. It was the sound of piano keys being pressed gently, a slow and mournful melody. My body froze. No, it was impossible. I was awake. This couldn't be happening. The music continued, each note echoing through the house like a dark calling. My feet felt glued to the floor, but I knew I had to investigate. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me, or maybe someone was messing with me. My heart racing, I grabbed a flashlight and descended the stairs toward the basement. The basement door was ajar, and the music was coming from there, louder now. The flashlight trembled in my hands as I slowly pushed the door open, the creaking hinges echoing like a scream in the silence. The air in the basement was cold, and the smell of mildew and something sweet, almost nauseating, filled my nostrils. The light from the flashlight illuminated the farthest corner of the basement, and there it was, the old piano, its ivory keys yellowed with age, its legs carved with grotesque figures. The keys moved on their own, as if invisible hands were pressing them, and the melody that came from them was the same I had heard in the house on the hill. Then I saw her, the woman with black hair, sitting on the piano bench, her pale, bony hands gliding over the keys. Her white dress, stained with blood, glimmered under the dim light of the flashlight. She turned her head slowly, her empty eyes locking onto mine. Her lips curled into a horrible smile, revealing yellowed and decayed teeth. I screamed, but the sound got stuck in my throat. The flashlight fell to the floor, rolling until it stopped at the feet of the piano. The music continued, each note a blow to my heart. I knew I would never escape it. The house on the hill was no longer on the hill. It was here, with me, and the melody echoing in the basement was a reminder that I would never be alone again. Did you enjoy the story? Then subscribe now and don't miss any videos.